was longer, and so that was why I was going to stop there. But I think we should definitely do these two verses. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Can I get? Oh wait. Give me just 1 second. Okay, can I get a volunteer to read our last two verses?
Sure, I can do that.
Right.
Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back.
Okay, so this actually offers a kind of interesting, and maybe even to some certain extent, complicating of some of what we've been hearing, because this sounds like reciprocity. And you could read it that way, actually. Though I think there's some other places and passages in Luke that would help mitigate too much of that sensibility. So, but let me just kind of work our way through this. So I'll do verses 37 through 38a. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. Now, here is how I would, at least would read those verses, is that in a sense, it's an extension of what we just heard in verse 36, right? Be merciful as your Father in heaven is merciful, right? It's an extension of that regarding, because why do we not treat our enemies kindly? We judge them to be our enemies, right? Right? I mean, we want to retaliate or whatever the case may be. So I think there's something here, and that then mirrors back, in a sense, to what I think Jesus is saying if we read between the lines, which is that God is actually merciful in judgment, and God abounds in forgiveness, even if God does also have to judge, right? And so the idea is that we should extend the same to others, as I say here, especially our enemies. The image that I think feels more like reciprocity is the second one, right? Starting in 38b. And here is, of course, an agricultural measure or image. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be put into your lap, right? So the image here is like of a bag of seed or of harvest. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. So as I mentioned here, this is certainly an image of reciprocity. And the idea on a certain level is if you sow good things will return to you. So it's almost a kind of return of the golden rule, stated in a slightly different way. However, it transcends the golden rule in the sense that it's not just if you treat others kindly that they'll treat you kindly, because that's like precise reciprocity. Here, the image is a reciprocity that overflows, right? So, and I want to make the point, I'm going to actually kind of skip over that sub point here and say, is what Jesus is saying here is essentially that we're going to be rewarded. And I would say, perhaps, because it's hard to say that he's not saying that, but I think a different way that we could read this so that it's not just a kind of replay and almost sort of undercuts, in a way, much of what he's already been saying. As I say here, it seems better to assume that our own extension of forgiveness and mercy to those who hate us will actually be a witness of God's grace and justice, which then will have the power to draw those others into God's mercy. So it's not, we don't extend necessarily forgiveness and mercy to others just so that they will extend it to us. We extend it as an expression of trying to follow God, be the way that God is, with the hope that that might produce actually repentance in the other as much as it would produce repentance in us. Even though that part doesn't say that, I'm kind of adding that as a sort of pastoral necessity. Otherwise, we sound like we're the source of all goodness and truth. So I find these two verses, particularly the second one, more difficult to interpret, but I give to you at least one, I think, viable interpretation, even if I'm not going to die on that hill. All right. Now I've stopped shared, and all that's been recorded.